Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast, where you get to choose, change and take action to create a different today and a different future. These are my stories of choice, change and action, along with the phenomenal guests I have on here. From a really young age, I've always desired to create a change in the world. The planet has been a constant inspiration to me, and Access Consciousness has shown me the tools to know that anything is possible. And I keep choosing. What are you going to choose? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Choice, Change and Action podcast. You are with me, Simone Milasas, your host, and I also have today, all the way from Italy at, I think, 1 a.m. in the morning, Chiara Dolza. So welcome, Chiara.
Hi, Simone. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Actually, you know what? I'm going to practice my Italian. So I need you to ask me. This is something I just learned a couple of weeks ago. Instead of when people ask you how you are in Italian, most people, answer the normal average things. So ask me how I am in Italian.
Come va, Simone?
Una favola.
Oh,
Una favola.
very good.
Yeah.
I just might tell you that it's more like una favola than una
Una
favola
favola.
because una favola sounds a little bit weird, but
But you knew what I meant. Una favola. Okay, cool.
I knew what you meant. Awesome.
So basically it's living the fairy tale, because so many people say, answer just good, very good, and it was like, so I started learning alla grande,
Rocking.
So,
yes.
Yeah. If you're going to answer, if you're going to talk, go for it.
You can see that you're really practicing because you're moving your hands, and we used to say that an Italian without hands is mute, and so you're really, the message
Exactly.
it's coming across very clear when you add that extra touch. Good job.
And as Chiara is saying that, don't forget that if you're listening to this podcast, you can also flip over to YouTube, and then you can see us on YouTube as well. So Chiara is an Access Consciousness facilitator and many different things, but she's also a mama. So how many kids do you have?
3 kids.
3 kids. I freaking adore your kids. I think I've known them since they were like very young. It's like, how old are they now?
Now they're 14, 10, and 8. So you definitely knew the youngest one since he was like in my belly. So yeah.
There you go. And part of one of the things that you actually do is that you, as an Access Consciousness facilitator, you are a conscious parents, conscious kids facilitator. So can you give us a little bit of a download and description of what you perceive a conscious parent, conscious kid facilitator is?
Well, Conscious Parent, Conscious Kids is really one of the specialty class of Access Consciousness that allow you to pragmatically use the access tools in your everyday life. And everyday life means anything from parenting to unloading the dishwasher. And it's extremely pragmatic because you get to use them. And you get to really, parenting is something that you cannot switch off anytime. So it is a constant exercise of presence and vulnerability and just really asking what will work here. Because it's such a simple question, but I don't know, you really need to ask it a lot with your kids. Also, they're changing all the time. So what worked yesterday most surely won't work today, and forget about tomorrow. It's a different beast. Just roll with it. So I think that the Access Consciousness Access Consciousness tools applied to Conscious Parent, Conscious Kids are phenomenal. Phenomenal ways to train your presence and to train your willingness to change all the time. Because your kids will. So you need to be on top of your game. You will need to change too. So
I couldn't agree with you more. And I don't have any children of my own, but I did have a stepchild, and he lived with me from the age of 5 to 14. Lived a lot full time, and then sometimes part time, etc. And, I wasn't planning on having a kid. Like, that was not in my world, growing up. I mean, I always wanted to have a business. That was my kid. I was like, I want to own my own business, wasn't about having kids. And then all of a sudden found myself in this relationship. And then also I remember at one stage thinking, I don't want to do this. And the guy that I was in a relationship with, he said, well, I sort of come with a 5-year-old. and I was like, God damn it. It's like, you come with a 5-year-old and a dog. And I was like, the dog I was super excited about. And the 5-year-old, I was like, can I do this? And
Yeah.
I am so grateful for the access tools in parenting. I mean, I'm grateful for the access tools in everything. But parenting, it showed me something completely different as well. And I think you really nailed it there, Chiara, when you can't try and work this out. You need to be in question every day. And every child is different. And as you said, every day is different. And the way you were parented and what you see around you, you can't use that as a reference point. You need to be in question every single day. So,
Totally.
what are some of the things that you would see that most people come across? And, like, I don't know if you have any stories or the stuff that people come across, and any of the uh, tools that you would recommend to use, like people can start with.
Well, now that you're like talking about your experience and
Mm.
in parenting and using the tools, I was realizing how I came to the tools of access thanks to parenting, and knowing that my reality
Huh.
was so different that I could not really like. Let's say that demographically, I was young when having kids in Italy, so I couldn't see anything around that would match what I was going through. So it was um, I was having a different experience from most of the people, or 100% of the people I knew, and I was really excited and curious about it. Like since I started being pregnant, for me it was a team conversation in a way, to make it easy, like the two of us to be like, okay, let's see how that go, and we're on this together, however it goes. Let's get to know each other. I was really curious in just starting this conversation and not putting too much projection. And I think that one interesting thing was it was not planned, like any of them. And I mean, with all the anti-contraceptive that I could have, like that I did took actually, even though I was pregnant with my first kid. He really wanted to come. Like,
I was going to say that so matches the energy of your kids, because your kids, they're so phenomenal and they're so present and they're so there. It's like they were like, I'm coming through. I don't
yeah,
care what you're using here, mama. I'm there. I love that.
yes. And it was a surprise. And I actually think that this was one of the first things that they exposed me to. And that is, no matter how much you planned, conclusion won't work. You really need to be in a constant state of question. And then somehow you also get to, I think parenting has a lot to do with leadership, and realizing the gift and the inspiration you be, which might sound totally arrogant and terrible, like, oh my gosh, no. But like you I always figured kids as this little alien, like when you have like a baby in your arms, and they're so alien like to me. And so being a parent or being exposed to a young child, for me it's always the energy of like, okay, things on this planet work this way, and give you kind of very smooth guidelines so you kind of understand, but then allow them to be who they are, and be like, there's some guidelines that you might want to respect to make your life ease, like education or this kind of conventions that people live by. But then what do you know? What will work for you? And I got tons of, like, sometimes I feel like I'm an etholog, like the people that study animals with my kids. When they were really young, I was just like observing them, being very fascinated from how different they were like acting. I remember this time, Leon got out of the shower and it was all steamy and hot, and then we had a kitten, and the kitten was just like passing by, and he took the kitten and he started to pat himself dry with this kitten, and the kitten was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but it's fine. And it was interesting because actually it really matched the energy of like a soft towel, something nice that you want on your skin. And he started to pat himself dry, and the
Yeah.
kitten was okay. I was like, well, that was uncalled for, but it works. So sure. I mean, if both of you are fine, fine. And kids actually do show you, if you're like willing to observe and not be too much in the, like, be there but not be in the middle of them exploring. They show you some phenomenal things. And we were actually having a conversation the other day about the book Talk to the Animals, and I think it's a phenomenal book I would very much recommend in parenting, because it's such a direct approach.
So Talk to the Animals is a book written by Gary Douglas, and you can get it on Amazon, Audible, etc. And it's actually, I'm not sure if it's on Audible. I know it's on Amazon. And it's actually got one of my favorite pictures on the front ever. And it's a horse that Gary used to own called Destino, who has passed away quite a few years ago. And the way that Gary has his arms around this horse and the energy of the horse and the energy of Gary is just so beautiful. I never forget that picture. It's just so beautiful to have that sort of energy between, I guess, the animal and you, the being. And I love that you recommend that as a leadership book and as a way to interact with your kids too. And I mean, most parents would do that thing of going, "What are you doing? Put the kitten down." And it's like, how many times have you done that as a parent, thinking that you're trying to make the right choice rather than, okay, well, does that work for you? You know, is the kitten okay? Like you said, the kitten seemed to be okay with it. So it was like, okay. And it's like, what if you could look at parenting in a really, really different way? And that's, if you're listening to this, that's what I would invite you to do. And even with other kids, like, I mean, you may not have kids, but you surely interact and engage with other kids as well. And it's like, how are you going to interact and engage with them? Like, that's your choice. I mean, the kids are our future. And it's like, so how are you going to interact and engage with them? And for me, it's so much about empowering them. I mean, one of the things I used to always say to my stepchild was, and I gained so much awareness where I realized when I'd say to him, dude, I was like, when you're being you, I want to give you the world, because he was just phenomenal. He was amazing, you know. And when he was totally being him, no matter what that was, I would just be like, anything. And I was like, but when you're not being you, I don't want to give you anything. And I was like, I don't want to make you dinner. I don't want to do anything, like nothing. It's like, so, you know, and showed him. And it was only through, I wasn't like trying to show him a certain thing. It just showed up that way. Because I was like, dude, when you're being you, I'll give you anything. When you're not, I'm done. It's like, go away. Like, this is not fun for me. And it's like, so what do you want to choose? And he would get to choose what it is that he, you know, how he wanted to be. It's okay. If you want to be, you know, shitty and annoying and all of that, okay, choose it. But just know I'm not going to try and change myself for you. It's like, you have a choice here. And I think that's one of the greatest tools that we can give kids too, is knowing that they actually have a choice. They get to choose.
Totally. And it's interesting, like now, one of the things that really struck base for me was like, what would it take to treat your kids the way you should have been treated? And Gary Douglas talked about this like difference between empowering and protecting. And to me, and it's just such an elegantly put, you know, empowering rather than protecting. I think that so many parents try to teach their kids to be acceptable or normal because they have been spot out as a weird, as a different person, and rather than embracing their difference, they have been, you know, they felt like castaways, so they don't want their kids to feel the same exclusion that they might have experienced, rather than really being vulnerable with it and allowing themselves to and even get the hints that the kids give them of like, I'm really different and that's how it's gonna go. What are you gonna be?
So what's some of the greatest hints your kids have given you, and how have you handled that?
Well, I would say that it's a bit weird, but like telepathy is real.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that like um, there is the possibility to have such an immediate beyond words conversation that exactly goes where it needs to go immediately, beyond all the explaining and all the structure that people put into like having a conversation or getting a message across. And I think one of the hint is, what do you know? It's something that I ask them constantly. Also, my kids are homeschooled, so before starting any topic, it's like, okay, so what do you know about that? Even just looking at
Mm.
a map, what do you know about this region? You know, because it's really just, what do you know? What do you think? What do you infer? Do you have a reason? Like, what do you see really?
Yeah,
And they really invite
I
you
love
to
that.
do that all the time.
Yeah, I love that concept. because I think that's taken away from us a lot as well. And what if you could empower your kids to ask them, what do they know? Like, that's a tool, ladies and gentlemen. It's like, what do you know? There was years and years ago when my niece was like much younger, and my brother went and bought this rug at a market, right? And so they come home and they've got this rug, and it's in the, in the house. And my mother came over and she said, "Oh, where is the rug from?" That's the question she asked. Where is the rug from? And my niece looked at the rug and sat there and looked at it like a few seconds, and then she looked up and she went, "England." And she was talking to the rug. And my mother went, "Oh, don't be ridiculous. It's not from England. It's from the market down the road, you know." But she was looking at it going, "It's from England. Like, that's where the rug's from." And it's like, what if you empowered your kids to be able to talk to everything? And as you said, like, for me, telepathy, and I know for you too, Chiara, is not weird. That's actually how we function. Like, if you look at nature, we are part of the ecosystem. And, your kids, like the way you spoke about when your kids are in utero and you started creating this like relationship with them of like, hey, who are you, sort of thing. And what do you know? And it's like, thanks for coming, let's play. What if you could be a really different energy with parenting that was about empowering your kids to know what they know?
Oh God. And it's completely out of control. It's something that you cannot predict the result of, and you cannot be involved in the result of. I know that, we are split parenting. I am not together with the dad of the kids. And I recall, like, this last summer, I allowed them to go for 1 month and a half in Argentina. And to me, it was a huge kind of step, because the month before, it was really light that they wanted to go and have this experience. So I chose based on lightness rather than calculation and, concept and stuff. And I just see how trusting their knowing and trusting what they know is light for them, even though they might have some experience that are not so happy, or that are not so happy. They can handle it. They know. They will let you know that they can handle whatever, and I trust them to be able to handle it. And actually, it's interesting because we're talking about animal. Like, there's this kind of background energy of animals, and I think kids really hint you to trust the animal that you be. And I mean, it's really sounds arrogant, but like, with parenting, it is one of those fields where it's very easy to push it away, but where you do have a knowing, because as an animal, you're giving birth to your cub, and then you're making sure that it stays alive. You're making sure to teach him basic survival skills. We're mammals, and we so often forget that, but there is an instinct, there is a knowing that we have. And what if we just like ask it to come afloat and be way more part of our lives, because it's there.
Yeah. Hey, you've mentioned the tool of lightness. Can you just, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but for anyone listening here, can you just expand on that, about looking at them going away and it was light for you, but also you empowering the kids of what's light for them?
Well, it's interesting because it's one of the basic tools, but it's one I never stopped to discover new things about. There is this tool in Access Consciousness that goes light and heavy. So you're empowered to ask a question, which is our basic analysis tool that we have. For any innovation, for any analysis in our life, the question is what will bring us forward in the conversation. And so if you perceive a sense of like lightness and expansion and like joy, and for me it's even curiosity, it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to just like go decide, and like naughtiness in a way, like and then on the other side, and that's one thing that for me was very different, is that it was not this it was not like, let's say, color wise black and white, light or heavy, but it was like more exciting, like ticklish, if it was light, and then if it was heavy, it was more like meh, like boring, like meh, I rather not, like something that doesn't sound right, that you rather go and clean up the oven rather than do these things. So the most boring thing you can do, like, no, not really. And so yeah, it's a tool that you need to, and you explained it brilliantly, Simone. I recall you just inviting and encouraging people to use the light and heavy tool in very basic, simple decision like coffee or tea. Do I stand or do I sit?
Yeah.
Which which really gives you
And
the
what lightens your world? I want to point out one thing though, because you said this, and I think this is sort of imperative to know. Light isn't like everything's going to be like, "Mwah," like if the kids, it was light to send the kids to Argentina, right, for a month and a half with co-parenting, and that shows up all the time, like things like that. So it was light, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every day is going to be these, rainbows and unicorns and the sun is shining bright. It's like something could show up that is like a clunk. And it's like, what awareness did you gain from that? I mean, even cleaning the oven might be a boring job, but if there's a lightness in your world, then it's like, okay, let's go clean the oven. And there's an awareness, then you all of a sudden get guests or something and you want to roast a chicken or, anything. So when you follow that lightness, it's not about looking for the rainbows and unicorns only and everything's going to be a-okay. It's following the lightness so that you actually can gain awareness of a greater possibility, because it's like when it's light, okay, is this going to create a greater possibility? And I love the way you describe like that heavy, and it's just like this clunk. And you're like, okay, why would I choose the clunk? And it's like, what's right about this I'm not getting is another great question. And we're not taught to ask questions. No. Like we're taught to control, to control and try and overpower, especially with kids. And it's like, what if you flipped the script and started asking your kids questions? Like, love that you would bring up the what do you know thing as well. Brilliant.
As a mom, one thing that the light and heavy got me out of, or got me to realize how much I was like implementing it in my parenting, was the list of the pro and con. And I realized how much I was trying to protect my kids rather than empower them. And, I'm sorry I did, but it's something that I've been doing. It's something that I've been doing for all good reason, let's say, for these reality standards, but there is no good reason. There is nothing that is enough of a good reason. Actually, well, I don't know, I read an article a couple of years ago that was like going on about the difference between being a male and a man, and it just had these many hints about being an infinite being that is in a male body or in a woman body, but there was this energy of like, rather be a statesman, be a leader, be an infinite being that make choices, being an adult of consciousness, rather than being something with a wee or a wawa, like just being this being in the universe. And it actually brought in also the concept of what change can you be. And
it just seems so like it's so powerful and potent as well, like the what change it can you be. And I love that you said that it's like not protecting them but empowering them. There was this this story about like with Nash, my stepson, and you never wanted to get a haircut. It's so basic, right? He never wanted to get a haircut, never wanted to wash his hair, like, at this time. And I'd always be like, dude, you have to, you've got to get a haircut. You've got to wash your hair. You've got to get a haircut. And one day he looked at me and he said, why? And I sat there and I was like, God damn it. And I was like, I couldn't really come up with this great answer except for, you look like a hobo and you look like, and I could hear, my mother always used to say to me, you act like nobody owns you. And I was like, God, I do not want to put that upon this kid, that you act like nobody owns you, because I used to get so confused with that as a kid. I think that was one of the unkindest things that my mother would say to me. So when he asked me why, and I was like, God, I just don't have something. And then I just let it all go. And I went, you know what? And not from, like my mother used to treat it and go, fine, and then do this like guilt treatment thing. I remember sitting on the veranda and I went, I didn't have a good answer for you. And I was like, you know what? You choose. Like, and then it was within 1 week and he came to me and he said, hey, Simone, he said, do you think that you could book me an appointment at the hairdresser's to get my hair cut? And I was sat there and I remember looking at my partner and I was like, what the fuck? How did that just happen? Because I just let it go. And then now he wanted to get his hair cut. And I was like, wow, it's like allowing them the choice to choose. Because like you said at the beginning, Chiara, what if you treated your kids the way you should have been treated? And for me, I grew up with two very different parents. One, my mother was always like, everything I did was, she would be like, well, what am I going to tell my friends now? You're embarrassing me. You're da-da-da. Like that was the energy that I got. Whereas my dad was like, this is your life. You need to choose. And he always said to me, Simone, I am here for you, but you need to choose your life. You need to choose it. So he was always so empowering that way. And my mother was so disempowering. And the difference of growing up with that was huge, you know. And this empowering, it was like there was so much space to it for me just to choose what actually worked for me. And I fucked up big time, you know, and stumbled and fell, but I also knew my dad was always there. He's like, come on, you know, get up, brush your knees off, like, let's go. Now what are you going to choose? Now what are you going to choose? And such a different way to parent. And I see that the way you be with your kids as well, Chiara. And I just think it's incredibly beautiful to have that in the world.
Well, and you know, one thing that I was wondering about the other day, these all these access tools and access workshop and classes and podcasts and conversation that you can expose yourself to are not about learning something that you don't know. It's about
Yeah.
stripping off all the layers of the things that you have been thought are real and true that you just took on. And also, I don't know, I love um, I love seeing kids from a kid's seeing stuff from a kid's perspective, and
Yeah.
we see. Um, in Italian, for example, grown-ups are called grandi, which is like the bigger one. And actually, the bigger one, the adults, are the one that provide you with stuff that you cannot reach because homes are built for grown up. So basically, if you need to, you know, fetch the glass to serve, you know, help yourself some water, you need the bigger person to make it available for you. And so I think that in many ways, kids are taught to be like adults rather than empowered to do it their own way because things is built in for an adult world rather than for a kid's world, which is, and there are many philosophy, of course, there are many, you know, maybe let's say Montessori philosophy, which in Italy doesn't work but in the rest of the world is really cool. It's about learn to do it yourself, and so they do have all, you know, kid size whatever ball or
That wouldn't work in Italy.
no.
Not with a mum and a nonna and everything.
Exactly. Nobody touching the kitchen. Well, I got one of my youngest son, Leon. He loves cooking, and my mom went to Switzerland the other day, and she came back with this huge, nice knife, and he was immediately like, you know, taking the board and starting to cook. And for example, he loves cooking, and he's the one go-to person for us if nobody feels like cooking. It's like, do you want to cook? And he would, and he cooks really yummy meal. And even if he grabs my phone, I'm sure that I will see cooking channels because he likes to see chef doing stuff. I know, it's like, we need to do caramelized onion, and I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, because I got 3 versions and I want to try them. And I'm like, okay, let's do them. Do you need me?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 8.
8. And what's one of his favorite things to cook?
His favorite thing is parmigiana di melanzane, which is like, it's not fried, we grill them, but it's eggplant and then sauce, like red sauce, and then mozzarella, and then everything in the oven. But I really like it.
Nice.
Yes.
Oh, that is so cool. I remember at one stage, we used to get these pizzas. They were like homemade pizzas from somewhere, right? And that was what Nash was able to do. Like he could put it in the oven and do all of that. And I look at my partner and I'd be like, I can't watch, because you were like, oh my God, he's got, you know, the way he was carrying it, and that, it was like this whole pizza's about to like jump on the floor. But I never wanted to cook dinner every night. And I remember seeing this meme, and it had this woman sitting on a couch going, you want dinner again? It's like, you know, I cooked dinner for you last night. And sometimes I was like that. I was like, you know, I'm happy with a glass of wine and some cheese and crackers or something. And it's like, but you've got a kid, you know? So I remember going, how many times a week do you reckon you can give a kid pizza before it's considered abuse, you know? And he would be like, every night you can, you know? But it's just such an exploration of yourself as well, I think, when you're parenting from that place of questioning too, because you gain so much awareness.
You know, since I've been renewing my conscious parent, conscious kid license, which I kind of, you know, left it there in a drawer for a couple of years because I really required to. Mm-hmm. I started having this huge download of information of how I have been parented, and it's amazing how much like admiration I had for the badass kid that I was, because I have been tried to be repressed with a lot of violence and like, you know, my dad was not the kindest. My dad is not the kindest person, and he loves me, but he like, it's a conditional love. Like, I love you if I can control you. and which never worked. And
Right.
I was just looking at, and it's not that I forgot about it, but you know those memories that you put so far away or you just ignore for a lot
Yeah.
of time, and then they come up. And I saw how the kid I've been never hold a grudge, but never allow anyone to abuse them. And I was, I think, a little bit over the top for some things, like you don't get to do it to me, or like you're crazy, man, if you hit me you're crazy, look at what you're doing, like, annoying
Yeah.
little kid. But still, I like never holding a grudge and keeping on going and never allowing like abuse to stick. um, so it's an interesting conversation that get you to look at you from a different perspective, and also even transform something of the past somehow. um,
Yeah. Well, you don't have to function the way, as you said before, that you were treated. And also, I mean, right now, if you're parenting, it's like you can choose to change something. And if there's a stuck point of view that you have, or like a hiccup like this, like we said before, like that clunk in your world, what question could you ask? And I highly recommend, it's like finding an access consciousness facilitator. And I mean, Kiara, I'm going to ask you where people can find you as well, like a conscious parents, conscious kids facilitator as well, because there's some, it's one of the areas I think everyone thinks they have to get it right. And it's like, how the hell do you get parenting right? It's like you said right at the beginning, it's like you just got to be present in each day, and you get to discover, like, people always talk about when you have kids and when they turn a teenager, right? And it's like Nash turned 12 on his birthday, and I was like 12, and we went, what the hell just happened? It was like all of a sudden it was like no more cuddling on the couch. It was like no more, and it was like this attitude, and it was like, what happened? And I get so many parents take that personally and go, oh my God, what did I do? And they expect their kid to be the same. But hang on a second, they've got all this hormone stuff going on. They've got a lot of stuff. They're starting to question their life. They're starting to question their choices, your choices. They're starting to. I remember as a kid, I was like so superior. I was like, my God, my parents know nothing, and had that, went through that phase of all of that. And it's like, so how are you going to be with that? What if you could relax into the parenting, and what if you could have a different choice available? So, Kiara, where can people find you and join up for one of your Conscious Parents, Conscious Kids classes?
Well, on the Access website, there I am available, and I have some intros and classes coming up. And then I have a website that is chiaradolza.it. It's in translation, so now you can just read in Italian, moving your hands, and not in English, but still read in Italian. And then Instagram and Facebook and all the usual thing. Can I just add something for the teenage thing? I know we might be at the end.
Yeah, go for
You
it.
know, I didn't realize I had bought so many point of view about teenage. Um, and the thing is, I
Mm.
always, when my eldest kid started to turn that like 12-ish, 13-year-old, I was like, oh, it's coming, the moment is coming, but whenever it's gonna come, that you're not gonna be snuggling in the bed or whatever, joking with me, I will know. And he used to get so mad. And then at one point, he was like, you don't know nothing. Like, what are you saying? And I was like, okay, okay, that's fine, fair enough. And then one day he came up with an article about what happened in the brain of a teenage, like what happened hormonally in a brain when you grow up. And he wanted
Mm.
us to read it. And I remember I was really busy, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it, as soon as I can. And so he read it to us at breakfast. He was like, I really want you guys to listen to what I am saying, because even though you don't realize it, you are projecting that I need to be this way, and I'm not. And he was really clear on that. So he made us listen to this article about how the brain changes and how everything morphs, and so
Mm.
that also your emotion and expressions really do go through a amplification range, and it looks like you're
Yeah.
very happy or very dramatic, but it's just because you really need to push, turn up the volume so much so then you can have this whole range available. And I must I had to fucking, like, I really had to destroy and uncreate all the point of view that I had bought, even though I didn't believe necessarily they were true. But I was
Yeah.
exposed, I was brainwashed so much into thinking that, oh, you got your kids and you adore them, and then they turn into this monster teenager, blah blah blah, and then the artist period, or now you're lucky but watch it, and they're going to be 12. You're going to hate them. They're going to hate you. And I heard it so much that it was ingrained in my reality. It was a filter through which I was even looking at my kids rather than asking a question. And so his willingness to be very, and he's very kind, he's very spacey. It doesn't take things personal. So he was the one that was one hint that Felix gave me, was like, no, you sit down and listen, because I'm not, it's not acceptable for you to project stuff on me, and this stuff is not empowering.
Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. Love it. Yeah. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah. And I think it goes one way too, though, is for me, I never thought that would show up. Mm. But when he did start changing, I was like, oh, okay then, but how are you going to be with that? And it's like, I love that he actually made you guys sit down and listen to that and explain what's actually going on. Because, I mean, we change all the time. It's like, and allowing that change, not expecting, again, like to control your kids. So we will have all of the places that you can contact Chiara in the show notes. So don't forget to subscribe, and please come follow us on Instagram. We've got, this podcast has its own Instagram now, Choice, Change and Action. So please follow us there and slide into our DMs if you like, and ask us for what it is that you'd like to be, talking about here as well. Because the whole idea of this podcast is you get to choose. It's like you get to change whatever it is you desire, but you've got to take some action. So Chiara, thank you so much for being here. I am super grateful, and especially the time of night. I'm always, morning in the case may be. You're like awake and alive, and it's now past 1:30 a.m. So sleep well. Buonanotte.
Thank you. Buonanotte. Well, buona giornata. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you, Chiara. Big hugs. Mwah. And I'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button on your favorite listening platform to get notified of new episodes. We read all the reviews, so if there's any topic you would like to hear about, let us know. If you'd like to know more about the tools, information, and classes mentioned in the podcast, head on over to SimoneMilasas.com and follow me on Instagram at Simone Milasas, or the podcast has its very own link on Instagram at Choice, Change and Action. Don't forget, you can download the show notes, and lastly, have way too much fun today.